Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hello,
We are,
Graham.
hello, Stephen. We are absolutely live, and my computer chose that moment. Oh, not only to go to sleep, but to wake up in a different resolution.
Oh,
And
good. I thought that
not,
was something I did.
no, it's something my computer did. Um, right, well, while I work on that, uh, let's do the pre show. If I quit this, then there won't be an IRC. Well, it's VNC. That's not a problem because we'll just
Yeah, I can just reconnect.
yeah.
There we
So
go.
I'm going to switch to the technical difficulties. Oh no, that looks all right. Right, that's the desktop back properly.
Okay, and then I will reconnect.
That is my OAuth token for. So and now that I've said that, people will be able to listen to that and then go back in the stream.
Okay,
So
is the VNC thing running? Because it's
no,
not.
no.
Okay.
I only start that when we need it. Okay, now it should be.
There we go. All right. Well, at least we're consistent. We have technical issues on the start of both streams now.
Yeah, I'm not going to set up the other thing I can't do automatically is set up the two virtual desktops. So we're just going to keep with this one. Hello, Eugene19, and thank you for bearing with during our technical hurdles. Um, I should work out how to turn off the screen blanking on. I imagine that is Window Maker. Huh. Yeah, I agree. There is no WPrefs. All right, well that's my homework anyway.
All right.
Yeah, okay. I need to take away working out how to turn off the screen blanking. Um, yeah. What is new?
Your computer is new.
Well, my computer is old. So I had. It's not old at all. Actually, it's fairly new. It's a 2018 MacBook Pro, 15-inch with the stupid thing. Um, and
On the touch bar.
yeah, stupid
Yeah.
thing. And at some point, like late last year. It just it must have been sort of September time. It just like died and refused to do anything. Like it wouldn't turn on, it wouldn't charge, um, it wouldn't. Uh, well, actually, I don't know whether it was charging because it wouldn't turn on. But it wouldn't even like boot to a loading screen or an error screen. It wouldn't do an SMC reset. It wouldn't do a T2 reset. It wouldn't enter DFU mode. So you couldn't even update the Bridge OS on the touch bar on it. You couldn't do anything at all. Um, and uh, I got a quote for fixing it. It was very reasonable quote and very like a very good local repair company. But the repair quote was very nearly the cost of a Mac Mini. So I, it was like 2 days before the M1 launch event. So I just said to the guy, like, you've got a very reasonable price. I'm going to wait until the M1 launch event and then see what, you know, I might just buy an M1 Mac and write this computer off. And I bought the M1, the Mac Mini, the one that we're actually using now to drive the stream. Uh, and it's fine, but I've always had this setup where I have a desktop computer that I work at all the time and a laptop computer that I have like files synced to so I can go and give presentations at conferences when that is a thing. I can work when I'm on the road when that is a thing. Uh, I can sit in a different room and use my computer, which is definitely still a thing. And I've always had that. When I say always, that is not true at all because like I couldn't afford a laptop till about 2006, but for a long time I've had that setup. Um, so I was kind of feeling the lack of a laptop. I've been issued one from work, but I don't really sort of use that for non-work purposes. Um, so decided to get this thing fixed anyway, because if I didn't want it, then fixed it would be easier to sell, and I could probably recoup the costs. Um, and I got it fixed, and I sent it last Wednesday or Thursday. Like literally just packed it in its box, packed that in bubble wrap, put that in a load of parcel paper, wrote the guy's address on it, stuck it in the postal service. It arrived like the next day. He did the diagnosis, worked out how to fix it, fixed it, and sent it back. He actually like didn't even bother posting it back. He just like got a mate to drive from Birmingham to Warwick with it in his van, and I imagine that this guy was coming this way anyway or something. Anyway, like it came back and it is now working fine. And what I've decided is that I'm going to keep it and I'm going to update it to Big Whoop and I'm going to use it as a modern MacBook, probably one that's hosting VMs with things like FreeBSD or AROS, which we use for our other stream. So yeah, like my thought is partly that we talked about this before, and we've definitely talked about it on this stream. That like both of us have this sort of on-off relationship with Apple, where we go like the Apple ecosystem is the simplest computing ecosystem to like use and to sort of have all your stuff in, and like life is easier when we've got that. But then we have these principles around software freedom and these frustrations with like either Apple's business practices or with like parts of their software being low quality or with like particular directions they take, and we go actually we'd be better off like intellectually or like ethically or morally or whatever, however you want to look at it, we'd be better off on a free software platform. And so like both of us have either just like installed a Linux distribution on a MacBook or like gone out and bought a ThinkPad or both or whatever, and probably ended up spending over £1,000 a year on computing stuff just to keep our daily driver computer up to date with our like preferences. Well, actually, like that's my experience. I don't know what yours is like.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, it's I actually looked into it at one point, and I was on pretty well an 18-month schedule where I would sell everything in my house that had a fruit on it, and then buy a ThinkPad and so on, and I would feel better a little bit, but there were just sort of paper cuts, right? There's no command key, so the copy and paste is different between terminal and the web browser and so on. And the web browser uses a different toolkit than the terminal, which uses a different toolkit than something else, and it just doesn't provide that cohesive experience that I think a computer ought to. And then the developing software for it becomes a major chore because I'm missing a bunch of stuff. I refuse to use Chrome, so the websites don't always work and things like that. So and eventually I wind up saying, okay, my mental health is more important than my free software principles right now, and then I go back,
Hmm.
and it's just a revolving door of I want a computing platform that respects me, but I also want one that has everything I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that are should be solved problems in 2021 that, like a mail client, for instance. Every mail client that you can get on free software platforms, except for GNU Mail, but I'll get to that in a minute. GNU Mail is very good. The rest of them are just bags full of compromises. And when I want to use the software that I like best is GNU Step based, but the GNU Step stuff doesn't have yet a cohesive environment, and it's sort of at odds with Firefox, and there are some small things that are missing or not quite there. Um, it's amusing because the things that I use on a daily basis are on a Mac are Mail app, which is complete shit. It's just better than every other option. Um, the address book, the calendar, and then a bunch of chat programs that I don't want to have to use anyways, like Slack and so on. Um, and so I'm not even using a lot on a Mac that requires a Mac,
Right.
but I'm not willing to use Google anything.
Hmm.
And so that means that my phone is an iPhone because you only have two choices. And if you're using your iPhone and the Mail client on your iPhone, then you ought to use Mail app on your Mac because splitting them is a pain in the ass, and so on. So it winds up being a revolving door of, do I want to do the work required to abide my principles, or do I want to do no work and have a convenient computing system that I hate more every year. So at some point, I feel like Apple will fuck up Mac OS and the apps so badly that it'll be sort of the turning point.
Hmm.
But every time a new operating system comes out, I think that, okay, this is it. I can't use it anymore, and I end up using it. Um, and so yeah, it's just, yeah, revolving door is sort of the best metaphor for it, I guess.
Yeah. So what I uh, thought of um, this morning actually, because I was and before I go there, Hi VFig has been talking in the chat and says that they've felt the same struggle themselves, and I think it's quite common. Like you've got and there are people who like do this very well. You look at like Leah Rowe, for example, who um, has the sort of electronics and the like low level computing knowledge to develop. Is it currently called Core Boot or Libre Boot?
Yeah, they're different, but I think she's
Okay,
currently working on Core Boot.
okay. So anyway, so she uh, can develop that, can like replace the BIOS in a computer with that, and can then use Triskel Linux or probably Triskel GNU plus Linux. I really don't care, and can get this sort of fully free experience on a computer, and probably like use a bunch of apps that make things work very well for her. And I've seen her posting screenshots of like editing tools. She's a very like prolific Vim user, and I'm a somewhat adequate Emacs user, so I don't do everything with I don't do everything within that editing environment that some people do, but like you can take that sort of very um, purist. It's not extreme at all. It's purist position, and and get on with your work. I actually can't because of the nature of my work. I would have to take a different job, um, which like is easier for some people than it is for others. It probably would be somewhat easy for me, but it would like mean quite a big upset to my sort of to my life, to my lifestyle. Um, because there's a lot of other things to go into what I work with, and it's actually it's quite a freedom loving environment because it's an academic environment, but it is not a freedom exclusive environment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but what I was thinking this morning is I was happened to be reading a paper on ethics of computers. It was like from years and years ago, '96, and the
Back when they had some.
well, it's quite interesting, really, because like back then, um, it was a survey, and I'm not going to remember all the details. It's not really that relevant to this thread, but um, they were surveying people who work with computers in general. So not like software
Mm-hmm.
engineers, but MIS professionals, data processors, managers, people who work with like CNC lathes in factories and things like that, um, and asking various questions about um, partly about what their sources of ethical decisions were, whether they were sort of personal ethical framework, like informal sort of networks and discussions within the company, or like formal policies or codes of practice or whatever. And also, what opportunity, whether the workplace presented the opportunity to use computers in an unethical fashion, and whether they thought anyone did. And the interesting thing was that um, generally most people believed that the workplace offered opportunities to use computers unethically, um, and generally managers thought that people didn't exploit that by and large, and educators and practitioners did think that, and I would expect that situation is no longer true. I would expect that uh, everyone still believes that computers give you the opportunity to be unethical in your work practices, but that managers no longer have the illusion that their people are working in fully ethical forms, or even that they are.
Right. It's there's the way that we interact with computers has changed a lot too because I think I've talked before on this stream about there are things that um, I have to use. One of my what I actually want out of my phone, as an example, is I want to have Telegram on it, uh, and with a keyboard, a thumb
Mm,
keyboard. And there were many computers throughout the '90s and 2000s that had these, and that's basically what I want. I just want a communications device in my pocket.
yep.
But uh, in order to participate fully in Swedish society, you have to use two apps: Bank ID, which is like a global authentication thing
Mm,
that's used for everything from looking at your phone bill to paying your taxes, and you use it to log into your online banking and so on. And Swish, which is like a mobile payments thing, because there's basically nobody carries cash in Sweden.
mm,
It's Most of the restaurants have signs on the door that say this is a cash-free restaurant. We do not even accept cash.
right, right.
Uh, and
That is very common here now, and that's been motivated by COVID-19, obviously.
Mhm.
But it's not Swish or Klarna or any of those things that has or what's the GNU one? GNU Tala. It's none of
Right.
those things has won. It is Apple, Google, and Samsung have won, and so they're all creaming like 7% off of the fees of each transaction.
Exactly. And in so in order to participate fully in society, I have to carry a smartphone, and
Mm.
I'm not willing to use a Google smartphone. Um, and so there's that tie, and then on top of that, you then have to, your phone has to interact with your computer somehow to be able to share data. And so those things, our life has become a lot more sort of online.
Hmm.
And um, we talked earlier this week about the difference between copyleft was really important, and the GPL were really important early on to make sure that you got the source code so that you could fix software that you ran on your computer, and keep the changes remaining free. But then people started running the software on their computer and not giving you the changes, and so the AGPL came out, and it's always been one step behind. The software licensing has been one step behind the modern usage, and now we're in a place where nobody gives a shit about like I have all of the source code, or nearly all of the source code, for what's on a Google phone, or what runs a website that I use or whatever, but it doesn't matter because they have my data. um, and so even if I'm doing things in a way that I find, sort of ethically or principally uh, good, I still interact with a whole bunch of other things that don't meet that requirement as a matter of daily use, and that's a big problem. This is why we talked about like right to repair legislation being more important than software licenses now, I think, um, and things like that, because the way that we interact with computers now is so different than the way that we used to interact with computers when these licenses came out and
Hmm.
things like that. And it's really difficult to have an enjoyable computing experience and avoid all of these things that we don't like.
Yeah, so Matthew Scala said, A, hello Matthew Scala, and B, he said, even just package managers, let alone app stores, drastically reduce his ability to modify the software he uses in any meaningful way. And like that is something I've actually noticed with FreeBSD. So we are now on FreeBSD release. I updated after the release package was um, pushed up, but before the release announcement was made today, because I upgraded about 2 days ago. Um, so was it today or yesterday? Anyway, FreeBSD 13 release is now officially a thing, and this computer
Mhm.
has been running it for a couple of days. But um, yeah, the reason that we started there was that the GNU step packages were fairly up to date, even on FreeBSD 12.1, which was what the live step distribution was based on. Then
Mhm.
I, I did eventually get an update from 12.1 to 12.2 working, and like the packages were about the same sort of up to dateness. But because FreeBSD 13 is a Clang first operating system, and those of us who love the copyleft licenses will be disappointed to hear that. But it means that it is much easier to get modern GNU step using modern configuration, using
Mhm.
like full Objective C2 and everything. Um, but if I got the stuff out of package and then I want to build one of the libraries from source, because like we've ported anti RSI and it needs a class that doesn't exist in the last release version of GNU GUI, then I've basically sort of temporarily hosed things or left them in an inconsistent state, because there are now two libgnustep-gui.sos knocking around, and things link to one or other, or even in some cases both.
Mhm.
But so uh, and VFig makes a point that actually sort of relates to where I was going with this discussion of ethics. He says that they say that update churn is also a negative for end user control in practice, even if not in theory.
Mhm.
That is related to two ideas. One, well, actually multiple ideas, but I'm going to pull on two. One is planned obsolescence, because if there's update churn, then you can always cut off older devices, and like older in scare quotes, because it might be ones that the vendor just wants you to buy a new copy of. And the second is that you no longer have autonomy over your computing experience because it is not up to you to decide whether you like the UI of the applications that you're using or to decide whether you are comfortable with them or whether you've learned them because somebody else gets to change them arbitrarily. Whether you're on uh, yeah, what the Free Software Foundation called service as a software substitute, or you're on like a native app, they'll just shit you a new version down the pipes that works in a completely different way. Um, having
Yeah, this
access
is
to updates,
hospital.
having live updates is one of those technologies that can be used for good, neutral, or evil purposes because it means you get live security updates. It means you get live bug fixes, live patches, but it also means you get live behavioural changes. I was hit by one. I used to use a password manager called OnePassword for the Mac, and they switched payment model from a from a sort of buy once to a subscription model. But I got a free update to the client that now required a subscription. So I essentially got protection racketed into how like paying for my passwords. Um, and this this has informed like my opinion on software freedom. Um, and so this paper I was reading, the tiny little footnote, uh, but one that was probably the most important thing I read in the paper. This author was describing, and in VFig is right, even in a fully free and open source software scenario, accepting and incorporating updates comes with a cost and a risk, and that risk increases with the number of patches you have, which you are supposedly free to do, and with the number of updates that come out, and that comes back to this idea. This author was talking about um, the the difference, and this is like philosophical masturbation for a second. Um, the difference between consequentialist uh, and deontological ethics. The consequentialist says that it's the outcomes of your actions that are important. So a consequentialist moralist would flip the lever in the trolley problem because doing so means you kill one person instead of five, and
Mhm.
that's a better outcome. The deontological ethics is about having sort of codes of practice and ideas that particular actions are good or bad. So a deontological ethicist wouldn't pull the lever because that means killing somebody. That means you have acted to end somebody's life. Um, and but both of these have like cause particular outlooks and have particular problems associated with them. I'm not going to go into that because like we're already half an hour into the stream. But what one of the things that he was addressing, this author, was the fact that consequentialism doesn't include an idea of justice. That you're basically allowed to do whatever you want if you can find a way to make the utility of it higher than doing other things. And um, he tries to find a way to kind of square these things. But he talks about um, the idea of justice being preserving autonomy, and this footnote says that the acronym ASK for ASKFOR is a good way to remember the goods of autonomy, where the goods of autonomy are basically the properties that you would preserve in a just system for all participants. And so they stand for ability, security, knowledge, freedom, opportunity, and resources. And I think like the free software world and the free software ideology, evidently is, um, is predicated on the idea of freedom. There are the four freedoms to use, study, share, and improve the software, and you need access to the source code to uh, to preserve some of those freedoms. Well, access to that source code gives you incomplete knowledge. It gives you some knowledge about what's going on, except that it's specialist knowledge that requires particular skills and training to be able to take advantage of, and it gives you certain opportunities, um, but particularly like the copyleft, it preserves those opportunities, but not all of the opportunities, and that's what you were talking about, where we find that the Free Software Foundation and its licensing program is essentially in a permanent arms race with people finding new things to do with their computers that that stop you getting the benefits that were written into one license, so you have to write a new license to ensure that those benefits are preserved in this new way of using the computer. What it made me realise is that like software freedom is part of a bigger problem, which is how can you be autonomous in an online world, and that a lot of the complaints people have about like surveillance capitalism, about being tracked online, the current Electronic Frontier Foundation campaign about Google's like new tracking technology is about loss of autonomy. It's not about loss of freedom more narrowly. And that Apple, in their own way, are good at some of the other characteristics of of autonomy. They are good at ability because of their focus on human interface and their focus on design. They make it possible if you are able to sort of purchase your way into their ecosystem. They make it possible to do things that you probably would need a lot more like specialist training to be able to do with like your standard Linux distribution. They are better at security, not in the like narrow infosec space, but at the sort of recognizing your proprietary, your proprietorship of your own identity is something that Apple do much better than a lot of their competitors. They don't do freedom, we know that, and I would say that their approach to knowledge is very, very mixed. On the one hand, they do the free like Swift Playgrounds training stuff and let you learn how to use your computer for free. On the other hand, they stop you from doing particular things and stop you from investigating the way that your system works because you're not allowed to like understand bits of the system or tinker with them or things like that. But there is this bigger problem, and I don't think that the software freedom movement is addressing the problem of being an autonomous agent online or even an autonomous agent offline but using a computer because of the narrow focus on freedom and on particularly copyright licenses.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that get sort of jammed down our throats that we don't want. Mako Hill has talked about this for years. He calls it anti-features.
Yeah.
Anti-features are things that are added to software that are not better for the user. And our modern computing is riddled with anti-features. I don't want any of the so-called features that I get because of the T2 chip in my Mac, but I don't have the option of having without. I don't want most software currently phones home to some analytics provider, usually Google. And when they added that, I definitely got an automatic software update that now enables the software to track me more.
Mm.
And I don't want to be tracked more. And I don't want the developer necessarily to be, inspecting the way that I'm using the software. Um, and so what we're seeing, and my focus in software is, and in technology in general, is I want to be people focused or end user focused. I want the software to provide what is good for the user, not good for my business model. Um, Not the thing that makes me more money, the thing that makes the software better. And that is something that we've lost somewhere along the way.
Yeah, and like I think the uh, what has happened recently, when I say recently, I'm talking about over the last sort of decade and a half of the sort of Linux world, is that there's been there's been some people attempting to address that, particularly in the space of making um, better experience software. Red Hat
Mhm.
Blue Curve was an early example of this, just like making it so that it wasn't obvious that you were switching between GNOME and KDE every time you launched a different app. Um, like Ubuntu introduced two things into like Debian. One was brown, and the other one was UX. Um, like
Right.
GNOME 3 sort of built a distinct but consistent human interface guideline, and moved all of their applications into conformance with this guideline. And at every step, somebody hated it and and forked the entire world so that they could get out of it. I mean, even like so there's a bunch of stuff that I've got with Mattermost and a bunch of sort of third party bridging apps so that you can use a completely free chat ecosystem, and you don't have to engage with Twitch for chat should you choose not to. But it still bridges all of the stuff in between. So there's like three services running. One is Mattermost, one is Matter IRCD, and one is Matter Bridge, I think it's called. Um,
Mhm.
and the those three things, like obviously, all need to come up after the network has come up on some VPS somewhere, and they need to come like the two that bridge Mattermost need to come up after Mattermost does, and like systemd makes that incredibly easy. I had to write like three text files and run three systemctl commands, but the fact that I have now mentioned systemd means that our comments section on this video, on when it goes on YouTube, will be longer than any of the other ones, because people will be telling me that I need to switch to Devuan, and that I need to like get all of the systemd out of my life, or I need to switch to Arch, or to anything else. And from a kind of like, I'm a nerd who likes looking at the internals of an operating system, that might make some sense. But from a I'm an autonomous agent who is in control of my computing, it absolutely doesn't at all, because it's much easier to get that stuff working in the correct way with
Mhm.
systemd than it is with System 5 in it. And don't at me, because I've used System 5 in it on on various computers. I've used BSD-RC, I've used LaunchD, I've used Solaris Management Framework, I've used systemd. Like this thing is actually like one of the easier ones to get around. But as soon as it's introduced, people want a different way of doing it. As soon as GNOME 3 comes along, Mate comes along, and everyone wants you to use GNOME 2 instead. As soon as as soon as Ubuntu comes along, people want you to switch to Arch or whatever. And I understand that freedom of choice is part of autonomy, but it's such a small part, and you've got to have got, you've got to have got to the point where you are self-actualized before you start deciding which of these autonomous outcomes do I want. I
Mhm.
don't think people understand what a privileged position it is on a computer to be able to choose which desktop environment you use. That you've got the ability, you've got the knowledge, you've got the security, you've got the freedom, you've got the opportunity, you've got the resources, and most people don't. Even if you go to an install vest and you give them like Debian and you stick that on their computer and you tell them that it's GNU plus Linux, not GNU slash Linux, and definitely not Linux, and definitely not Linux. Like, you can get all of that stuff, and you still haven't actually helped them like gain their autonomy.
Yeah, it's an interesting place because I mean I obviously have opinions about things like systemd and so on, but there's the ability to choose how processes launch on my computer doesn't necessarily impact my day-to-day life. I
Right.
honestly know very little difference between pre-systemd Debian and post-systemd Debian. And unfortunately, I also notice very few of the improvements that I expect. Um, and so it's a really important point.
Yeah, and I think like for many people, uh, autonomy is at a much lower level. It's what VFig was saying about understanding that my computer is going to work tomorrow the way that it works today. And so if we can like if one of the things that our work on GNU Step and its applications does is just bring a bunch of stable applications to the Mac, that is going to make Mac users more autonomous than
Mhm.
they currently are. Where next release the Mail app will probably be some shitty iOS client that's been ported with Catalyst and that doesn't work anything like this week's Mail client does.
Right, right, and that kind of thing, being able to use my computer with software that doesn't, having the choice, having multiple choices available is only useful when more than one of the choices is good.
Hmm.
I talked about mail clients. The biggest bug up my arse about mail clients when I go back to free software is I can use GNU Mail, but I'm not using GNU Step everything, and so it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the system. It's very different.
Yeah.
Um, I can use Evolution, which is incredibly buggy. I can use Kmail, which lost mail for me the last couple of times I used it, and uh, and I can use Thunderbird, and Thunderbird wants to include the entire kitchen sink, an RSS reader, and a calendar, and stuff like that, all in one. And Thunderbird is the only free software mail client that I actually enjoy,
Hmm.
but it's got all this extra garbage grafted onto it that I don't want. But I'm, I mean, the freedom of choice for choosing the software that you want to use is really important when you have multiple good options. But you don't really have a choice if all of the options suck except for one.
Yeah. Right. Uh, and there's another sort of aspect to this autonomy thing, which I want to explore, which led me to decide to keep my Mac rather than just to like sell it and get a Linux box or whatever. And that is the fact that I don't feel like I should need to buy a new computer every time I get angry with the way my computer works. I think I should be able to
Right.
carry on using it and just find a way to make it work better. And I should be able to do that for other people as well. So, like, that is about the we already talked about the freedom to use the software for any purpose. What about the freedom to understand that the software I have tomorrow is the software that I have today, or the freedom to use the computer that I already paid for? And Apple are actually sort of okay at this. We talk a lot um, about the. I've just seen VFig's question. I'm going to start doing some background looking up a reference while we're chatting. Um, it we we do talk a lot about sort of Apple's planned obsolescences and about chucking off old support for old hardware and old versions of the OS and things. Old versions of the OS they definitely uh, throw out faster than Prince Harry's wife at a royal family gathering. But old hardware, they're actually not too bad at, and old apps on new operating systems, they are very, very good at. Not as good as Microsoft, perhaps. Certainly not as good as Sun, but they do not tend to throw away the ability to run old software on new OS that that frequently. And we need to give them credit there, but they do like changing the software you get and forcing you to update to a new version even when it is worse. So remember vividly, I was doing a talk on computer ethics at an event in Swansea, and I saw Keynote get an automatic update while I was working on my slides in the hotel. Um, but I didn't think this would be a problem. And so I just shut the lid on my computer and went to the venue, opened it up, and um, somehow, oh, it was a new version that was a ground up rewrite. I think I think when they say ground up, they mean they ground up all the software and then just sprinkled the ashes over over the hard disk. Um, but it didn't have a bunch of the features that I'd used. Uh, and it couldn't open the version of the um, it couldn't open the presentation because it used features that weren't supported in the new file format. Like it wouldn't migrate the file. It asked me to open it in the old version of Keynote, remove the features, and then migrate it, which I couldn't do because it had just automatically fucking updated itself. So I was
Right.
left standing in front of this auditorium. Luckily, with enough time on my hands that I had to tether my laptop to 3G on my phone, download the other version of Keynote from the support website, install the old version of Keynote, and then run the presentation from that. But that kind of thing, Microsoft do this all the time. We're going to shut your computer down because we want to install an update, even though you're gaming on Twitch or you're presenting to your board meeting or whatever. Um,
Or
we're
trying to
going
run a
to
stream.
we're going to give you a new improved version of the software. Contains bug fixes and performance enhancements that can no longer open your file that you are working on. That is bullshit.
Yeah, and it didn't do anything for you. This rewrite, I really hate when software people announce that this thing is a rewrite,
Mm.
because what I hear is you've given up on all the things that I loved about the old version, and
Yeah.
um and also uh you didn't rewrite the software for me. You
Right.
rewrote it for yourself. And with that, I need to take a quick bio break, and then we can carry on.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll be
Okay. I have pasted that in on one computer, and I'm logged into chat on the other computer. That was a stupid idea. Anyway, this thing is called just consequentialism and computing. It's a paper from 1999. I don't know whether you are going to be able to get it without a paywall from that link. Actually, um, I do have access. Let me have a look for it on Google Scholar, because often these things are available from other sites. There we go. It is on a public archive, so I'll give you the public archive version. So the second link there is the link that you can actually access this paper from. And like I say, this idea of ask for is is one that is literally just like a little footnote somewhere in like the middle of the paper. But that was the thing that I took more than anything else from from this paper that I read. Mov.1 says they didn't rewrite it for power users, they rewrote it for the average user who would otherwise never update their software. The problem is that, like, I hadn't used power features. I had used some like transition that it didn't that they hadn't bothered rewriting, and that came in a later update. It was something stupid like Magic Move that just like disappeared for a version and then got reintroduced. I wasn't doing like weird fancy Apple script. I wasn't doing. I mean, are there any power user features in Keynote at all? Like, I don't think so. I think they're all user features. I think this idea of power users can actually be quite dangerous. I'm not suggesting that you are using it in a dangerous fashion, but there is this idea of like you know software engineers, power users, and muggles, and that like these people deserve different levels of autonomy when it comes to computing. And it's I'm not saying that you are doing this, but I'm saying that I have seen people use those terms in that way, and it's quite a dangerous thing to do.
So Eugene19 is asking for the official webpage of GNU Mail, which I think, I'm going to double check here, I think it's at the Gap.
You do that, I will take a comfort break.
All right. So there isn't really an official website, but here is the link. That contains the link to the fork website and to the now defunct website. That's where I go for most things. Yeah, so Move 01 says that similar to almost nobody knows how to fix their cars these days. One of the things that I find troubling about a great example of this kind of thing, the anti-features, is so the DMCA says that you are not allowed to modify a thing, basically prevents you from touching anything that has software in it. So if you picture a thermostat in a car, until, and in many cars still, but a thermostat is a mechanical valve that opens at a certain temperature and closes at a certain temperature, so the car engine can get up to a certain heat, and then the thermostat will open and allow the coolant to flow through to maintain an optimal running temperature for the engine. And mechanical thermostats are really great. They fail in a positive way. So when they fail open, which means that your engine will never quite get hot enough, but it won't overheat, which would be way worse. And you can replace a thermostat with a wrench and 3 bolts, or you can pay a mechanic to do it. In a lot of modern cars, the thermostat has become a valve and 2 sensors, and then a software that measures. I'm getting a lot of background noise from you now, Graham.
That's because the vent is on.
Aha. Okay, it seems to be mostly gone.
Okay.
And so in a lot of modern cars, the thermostat is not a mechanical valve that can be replaced anymore. It's a valve that is controlled by software and 2 sensors. And what that means is that because the valve is controlled by software, you're violating the DMCA if you replace the thermostat in your car. They can even put it in the same size and shape of container, but it doesn't work any differently. It's actually considerably less reliable because the sensors and the flappy bits that they use are less resilient than the mechanical thermostat. It's less useful, but it was only changed to prevent people from fixing their own car or hiring someone to fix their car. And that kind of thing was added to a modern car to in service of the manufacturer of the car to make more money, not in service of making a better car. And that's the kind of thing that really chaps my ass.
Yeah, and that's like, you know, that is a question of autonomy. The problem is not that nobody knows how to fix their cars. The problem is that nobody is allowed to fix their cars. You
Yes.
shouldn't need to know how to fix your car. You should be welcome to learn how to fix your car.
Yeah, when we were doing when I was doing free software activism and sort of copyleft activism years ago, people said, "Well, I don't need the source code because I'm not a programmer."
Mm.
And I always would ask them, "Well, would you buy a car with the bonnet nailed shut?" And they said, "No, I wouldn't. That would be ridiculous." And I said, "Well, why not? You're not a mechanic. You can't fix your own car."
Mm.
And they said, "Yeah, but I can't pay someone to fix it if the bonnet's nailed shut." Well, exactly. And that is the problem with modern software for me, is that I am a programmer, but in many cases I would still prefer to pay someone else to fix a bug or solve a problem. But I think everyone should have the ability to have that done for them.
Mm.
And yeah, it's really terrible. I recently installed some security cameras at our house, and I decided to go with one of those, the convenience, the convenience services. I got the Arlo system, which is widely considered the best system, and the software is complete garbage. And it's mostly garbage because they designed it to work around a cloud service, and nobody actually wants it to work around a cloud service. Arlo
Mm.
wants it to work around a cloud service so they can charge you a monthly fee after you spend a ridiculous amount of money on their cameras. And that one is particularly annoying because I don't even want my videos on a cloud service.
Mm.
It's just a non-optional thing. And VFig says that importantly, you can choose who you hire to fix your software for you. Yeah, that's an important thing. I think that's an important thing with cars. It's important to be able to choose the mechanic that I take my car to. That's an important thing. In software land, you don't get to choose who to take your software to be fixed, and your only option is to beg the vendor to fix the problem, and it's up to them whether they want to or not.
Right, and you only find out that there is a problem after you've started using this thing because you don't get to uh, evaluate the
Mm-hmm.
software on any basis other than whatever sort of materials you are given by the vendor, which might be, yeah, they might give you a free trial, but you don't even know that the free trial version is the same as the unlocked version. Like, yeah, there could be a bug that is triggered by the by the licensing code. I've seen that before.
Right, right. And and software is suffering for it. I recently had reason to um, look at CAD software, and I decided, okay, well, there's FreeCAD, which is great, but it has a slightly problematic interface, and it's a bit hard to use and stuff. And I thought, well, if I'm willing to spend a little bit of money at this, what are the professionals using? And so I installed AutoCAD, and I tried Revit, and then I tried the 3D printing one, and it turns out that actually all of that software is garbage now too, because they've developed it in a way that makes it incredibly unreliable. um, and they've done this to support their business, their rent collecting, not to provide better software.
So we do want to provide better software, and we kind of talked about this idea earlier in the chat this evening that um, we kind of want the basic things to work and to be stable. And there is a basic thing that works and is definitely stable, but they could do with some new um, capabilities to fit into a modern workflow, and that is SimpleAgenda,
Hmm.
the uh, the calendaring app for GNU Step. Um, so I have it installed. It kind of works. We've got like day view, week view. You can month view. You can tell that I don't use it on this computer because there's no events in it. Uh, and we've got a couple of like different to-do list things. And I've got a feeling that we can um, uh, like use some remote calendars. How you do that, I can't remember. Okay, iCal and Dav. Um, I have a fairly simple desire from a like, and it's not from a calendar app per se. It's from I've just noticed a thing with the icon that I would like to fix, which is they put the date really small down here, but left this big 9, which isn't the current date, up here. I wouldn't mind seeing that change. But anyway, one thing because like looking over at this computer, my calendar icon says April 14th on it. Um, like the thing that I do literally every day is someone emails me a um, a mail with an event in it, and it might be like an invitation. It might be an Eventbrite event. It might be actually some text that's been like smart detected by the mail client as being like describing an event. But like focusing on the simple one, someone sends me like a calendar invite to a meeting. I want to open that event, have it open in my calendar, added in the calendar with all of the details, including like the meeting link and everything, and then for there to be 3 buttons: accept, maybe, and decline.
Hmm.
And for doing that, to send the email, which would be back in the mail client, acknowledging my RSVP. That is the thing I do. I don't know whether that is possible in SimpleAgenda at the moment, but like it is the thing that I would like to have if I wanted to switch to SimpleAgenda.
Hmm. And for me, I live in my calendar. If something is not in my calendar, I will forget it. And so my needs are similar. I do need support for multiple calendars over CalDAV. I want the things that you mentioned as well, and I really like for viewing multi-day events. You've got the month view and the day view, the week view in the tabs on the
Mm.
left, but it's hard to look at your month and see events that span multiple days. And so that view would also be useful to me.
Okay,
And that's
well,
something that iCal does very well.
that seems like a thing that we could probably like that is the lowest hanging of the fruit that we have defined so far. So let's have a look at that. Let's say I've got a week off, which would be a luxury, and it's an all-day event. I can't set the start and stop time or the duration of that event at all. So I can't set a multi-day uh, appointment.
Uh huh.
So there we go. There is our bug.
All right. So yeah, a multi-day appointment would be something that would be nice.
I wonder. So like just looking at a different thing. What I would also be interested in is what is the presentation? Ah, what is the presentation of a really long event that starts at like let's say at 12 and is 36 hours long. Enter I can't enter a duration that's longer than 24 hours. But this one
But
should span 2 days because it should
yes,
go
it should.
from 12 on one day to 12 the next day. And yeah, so I do get it on both days. So like that part is working.
Mm-hmm.
It is spanning that time. So Movnot1 asks, what's the history of Simple Agenda? Next Step did not, to my recollection, and it's been a long time since I've used Next Step or OpenStep, it did not, to my recollection, have a calendar app. I could be wrong. But there used to be a GNU Step app called Agenda. Uh, and that disappeared a long time ago, and nobody's been in contact with the developer. The source repository disappeared from the web. It's some sort of self-hosted CVS thing. Nobody has any binaries for it. Like Agenda has just disappeared from the planet, and I think Simple Agenda was we do need a calendar app. I'm going to create one. Let's appropriately. Philippe Broussel is the author of Simple Agenda and has been since its inception. You can see here the last update, and I've built from.
I think that's my computer making
That
noise,
is
if you
your
can hear
computer
it.
making noise, yeah. So the last version is 2017, but this is Git master. So like the last release was a 2017 release, and it uses libical from way back. It uses a version of libical from 2011. So for my thing, for doing the accept maybe decline responses, I have a feeling we're going to have to update the version of libical which it uses, which is not going to be a trivial task because it's there's been various API changes in the meantime. But for your thing, for doing events that span multiple days, and then we presumably want them to appear as a continuous block in this calendar view. That feels like
Mm-hmm.
something that can probably be done within the current architecture, but I don't know because
I think
I never read the code.
right. I think so because when you made it an event that spanned over the night, it already did everything else correctly. It just, I suspect,
Hmm.
that it's just a UI issue, and so why don't we take a look at the code for that?
Yeah, we might want to. Yeah, we have to ask questions like, should the 15th have a yellow background because this event is on the 14th and the 15th, and if we had a week long event, should all
Mm-hmm.
of these be bold? Should all of these have a coloured background? Those are the questions we're going to have to ask as we go along with this.
Yep.
Okay, so look at the code. What I can do is show you the code, and it's not in GAP, it's in Simple Agenda. I can't drive us around this because, I can, but no better than you can. Um, because like I say, I have not looked at this code yet. This is, I've got a feeling this episode is going to be like 20, 30 minutes of us going, where would we put blah, and then finding out whether blah is there, and then next episode will be when we start to get into making some decent changes.
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at. That looks like the whole thing. I'm just going to open Emacs. No, I'm
Oh,
not.
why is it? Oh, okay, I know why it's done that. Okay. Um,
Okay, there we go. And it's in. Oh, look at that. Why is it? There we go. Okay, so I assume there is agenda store. My first question is, how is it storing events? And is it storing the start date and time with a duration, or is it storing a start date and time and an end date and time?
mm.
Because that's sort of the first thing that I'm thinking about. Um, and so
And my guess
I
is
would.
that is going to be handled by libical.
Possibly there is the event class
Well, let's have a look
here.
at let's have a look at that.
Okay, so it is a start date and duration.
And a flag for whether it's all day.
Mm-hmm.
So that is already, I mean, that is sufficient for what we want to do. As long as none of our things are longer than 4 billion minutes, we can use that for a multi-day event.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Uh,
Um,
Although, I would want to ask what it does for all-day events because it probably does handle that differently. It probably just like infers the start and end date, and we need to not do that.
right. Okay, and then it also has recurrence rules and all day. I wonder what sticky is used for. I don't know what that is. So it looks to me like it becomes a UI issue if we say create a new event. Why is my clicking not working? I'm going to full screen this. A new appointment. And okay, so it uses the current day that's selected in the calendar. It would be nice for the edit appointment window to say the date that it's creating it on.
Yeah, and to give you the choice of changing it. And I think didn't we find that Gusagui now has NS date picker? Wasn't that one of the things that we found in the anti-RSI port?
You're right. I think we did find that they now have NS date picker. So maybe using NS date picker. I don't remember what NS date picker looks like even, but
Hmm.
I would say that's probably a good place to start. And then there's also the store, which we don't really care about right now. And the
Yeah, I don't
repeat.
think I think what we really need to do is to change this time and duration set of things such
Mhm.
that you can create longer events.
Yep. Okay, so where is I think the user interface is the place to do that. Is it Gorm in this one?
I don't know.
Well, let's take a look. Let's
Well, there is
see.
an appointment editor class,
There it is.
so we can see what that does.
Let's take a look at the header file and see what it says. So it's got an ID duration and a duration text. Oh, interesting. It has end date, which is
Not
interesting.
exposed in the UI, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so let's take a look at the appointment editor implementation.
Okay,
Let's
so it
see here.
does load a nib there. Um,
Oh, yep. There it is. Okay.
what? I'm just going to quickly move the chat window so
Go
it's
ahead.
still on screen because.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And now I notice that VFig asked, "Does it matter if the meeting feels like it's 4 billion minutes long?" Uh, it does if you're on a 32-bit computer. Or if you have 32-bit
Okay.
emotions. Could you please make Emacs's window a bit wider? Certainly. Oh, no, I can't.
That's really
120,
strange.
120 characters should be enough for anybody. How is that, Eugene?
That's a really long line, so it's not the best line for it.
Hmm.
Okay, so it loads. Okay, so it loads the appointment Gorm, and inits with an event. Okay. So I guess I guess sticking an NS date picker in there would be a good place to start, don't you?
And if you go back to the init, um, yeah, go back to that method. Just scroll down a little, or hit Control L where you are. So
Yep.
it does set end date. Uh, so the controller has a field for the end date that has a date formatter attached, but the UI in the GORM file doesn't, presumably just doesn't set that outlet. So like there is an end date and nothing is editing it. So yeah, we might even be home and dry just by uh, setting that. That would presumably be a text field.
Okay. All right. So let's open that file in Gorm, and my I'm not very good at Gorm, so you get to drive for part of that at least. Um, I assume we just want to say. Oh, I mean, there must be a project file in here as well.
No, there won't be. It's managed by Makefile.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
it'll it'll be in resources.
appointment.gorm. I think. Oh, nope. Is it Gorm? I don't know. Where is Gorm? Oh, right, G open.
So this is something that happens with a bunch of these apps that they load for some reason two copies of things like Foundation and AppKit. Uh, I need to understand why, um, but it's not a big deal. However, that does look like a big deal. There's some timer that is doing the wrong thing. Uh,
Yeah, that does look like a big deal.
anyway, it's not stopping us doing what we want to do because I don't know what we want to do.
Right. So I was going to look for NS date picker
No, you won't find that in
in.
Gorm.
Okay. So,
Like
uh,
basically Gorm is Next Step Three's interface builder or OpenStack
right.
Four's interface builder. So any controls that have been added since then almost certainly aren't going to be in there.
Okay, so how do we add those to Gorm?
Now Movnot one says it's possible that the end date is used to the end of repeating events, not the duration of a single event, and that's a good point. If you add
Oh, that is a very
a
good point. Yeah.
if you add a recurrence, yeah, so there is this until field, and that's going to be
Aha.
what the end date is.
Right. Okay, that was a good catch.
Yeah.
So, uh, I still think we probably want um, a date picker in there. I just don't remember how to get it in there. I guess we would put a custom view in.
Yeah, that's going to be the easiest thing. If we want to carry on using the Gorm file, which I think we do. So the first question really is how big is a date picker? And to be honest, the easiest way to answer that is just going to be to jam the custom view in there,
Yep.
set its custom class to NS date picker, then load the GORM file and see how bad it looks. Yeah, well, I mean, we could do something more like advanced than that, but
Do we want to
honestly,
just make the window bigger and throw a date picker at the bottom of the
yeah, why
window?
not? Yeah, we just want to get one up there at the moment.
Okay, let me see if I can make that window bigger. I can't. Can you try? It's not registering my click on that.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay, and then we'll drag a custom view in here. And then we want to set its class, which will not be in the list, I guess.
No.
Right. Okay, so we need to set the name of
So go to the fifth option, custom class.
Okay.
That should
And
have loaded a new palette. And
it should have. It's the NS timer is doing some more errors at the same time. So
yeah, I
this
don't
is
know whether that's related. I mean, it's been doing that all the time.
right. It hasn't stopped. Okay. Well, that's not very nice.
Okay, so the other of those palettes do load. It's just that the custom class palette. Oh no, the custom class
Is
palette does load and is equivalent to the. That's very not helpful, actually. It means we
right.
can't set a custom class. What we would have to
What
do.
about if we set it to
Here's a
say
stupid thing we can do. We can
okay.
uh, define a class called an estate picker. Oh, I don't want to do it there. So I'm going to subclass that. Oh, let me rename. Why won't you let me rename? Oh, that's confusing.
There. Is it under edit or inspector?
Attributes, that'll do.
There it is. Okay.
And actually, I don't want it to be a NS object subclass. I want it to be an NS view subclass. Because now I should be able to. Yeah, Model 1 says NS color does not recognize tooltip text color is the exception. I agree. I don't think that is causing any problems, except it isn't displaying tooltips. And
Right.
I'm not currently focused on fixing Gorm. So I was kind of hoping that now that we've created that class, I would be able to see it here. And that is not what happened.
Hmm.
Okay, well I think doing date picker, what we can do is set it to. I can't even set it at NS view. Maybe it needs to be a subclass of NS control. Will you actually show me the inspector for the thing I'm looking at? Yeah, thank you. That's right. Oh right,
Okay.
I hadn't actually set it to NS view before. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so now NS date picker is a subclass of NS view.
Okay.
And now I can set that to be an instance of NS date picker. And now I can save that. Quit Gorm. Quit SimpleAgenda. Make SimpleAgenda. See, it's loading. I'm getting annoyed by that enough to do something about it now.
And it's not showing anything, but we didn't instantiate it, right? We just set the class.
Well, it's instantiated in that Gorm is a collection of
Oh,
objects that
right.
get saved to a
Right.
disk. But so yeah, Mov.1 NS step picker is an NS control subclass, but it is also an NS view subclass. So all I wanted to do was give myself the right to use the class, the class name NS state picker in that chooser. Because what should happen is that um, uh, Gorm pickles it, and that was suboptimal. Uh, I need to
That
check.
was it did that thing again, and
It did.
I think it might have been me
Ah, right,
because I
you're doing it.
moved the VNC window. Oh, there we
Ah,
go.
right,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. I moved my VNC window, but now I'm not moving the VNC window
Good
anymore.
idea.
Okay. So that was me. Okay.
So what I was hoping would happen there is that I would get a hole for a custom view, and then on loading the Gorm thing, its class should be set to NS date picker. That hasn't, as far as I can tell, happened. Um, and actually thinking about it, it's going to be expecting the sort of NS date picker it got from. There was log output Model 1. This thing here, file NS concrete map table .m in NS map remove null table argument surprised. So it presumably is looking for an NS date picker class inside its bundle and not finding it. Um, Regardless, that thing that I thought was going to be the quick hack to get date pickers inside IB is not the quick hack that gets date pickers inside IB.
Okay. Um, Now, in for the rest of the things, if we go back to Emacs, for the rest of the things, uh, it loads the bundle, and then it sets the, oof, and then it just sets things on them because they're already instantiated. But we don't have an outlet to reference it.
Yeah, but doing an outlet is the easy bit.
Right.
Getting it to be a date picker is the hard bit. Um, the So Mov.1 suggests we could add the date picker programmatically, and that is definitely a thing we could do. We could like just take decide on a rectangle and add it as a subclass somewhere in here. The other thing we
Yep.
can do is this is do the same thing that this is doing, which actually am I in Gorm? No, I am in SimpleAgenda.
Yes.
Uh, that repeat thing doesn't actually work. You can't edit. Ah, there we
Oh,
go. You
there it
have to
is.
tick a thing that wasn't visible. But you can just use a text field and just edit the date in. And
Right.
we could do that as bug fix 1 and then work out how to use date picker as bug fix 2.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds
And
reasonable.
otherwise, we're going to have a date picker for end, uh, for start date and end date, and not a date picker for the repeat date.
Right.
So I think the first thing we want to do is to reset. Oh, we probably want to quick. No, I have quick call.
Checkout.
Okay.
And let's make sure it did that. Oops. Yep. Okay, and then I guess rebuild it.
Yep.
Okay, and then we want to open it again in Gorm. And I guess we also want the duration to be actually possibly a simpler fix is replacing this text box hours with a select box that says days, weeks, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, uh, we would probably then. What would we do with that slider?
That's a good question.
Is that thing Oh, that thing isn't editable, is it?
No. So
No,
it,
it
it
isn't.
it represents the value of the slider.
Yeah.
So if we make that editable, get rid of the slider and change hours to a duration select
Hmm.
box.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could be, yeah, let's try that.
Okay.
So make it editable. This we can change to,
Did that actually make that editable? Because I'd expect it to not be grey after. Oh, it did. Okay, never mind.
okay. And then we can change this to,
You're going to want to like just delete that and recreate it because you're going to want one
ah,
of these buttons here. I mean, you can
okay.
always.
So we can delete that. And this. And then we can drag and drop a select box in here. Make it a little wider. Whoops. Let's make it a little bit wider. And we will call it uh,
George. VFig is off. Yeah, good to see you. Um, Undoubtedly, we'll see you again sometime soon. Please like and subscribe.
thank you for joining us. Okay, so let's go back in here. Okay. So this one, where do we change the name of it?
What?
Oh no, that's where we set a connection, right? We set up a connection in an outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we want in here, we want to add something to the view. Um,
Yeah, so the easiest way to do this off the top of my head is to define it in the header file and then tell. So the way I would do it in Next Interface Builder is to define it in the header file and then tell um, Interface Builder to reread the classes. I can't remember whether that's how Gorm works.
okay. It already has duration text. I wonder what it's using that for.
It doesn't sound like a thing we want.
No. No. Oh, that's the text field for the amount. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we want the duration. What do we want to call that?
Units, I
Duration
guess.
duration units. I can't make a semicolon.
There we go.
Okay. And then we want to make that an outlet. Do we have to specify IB outlet?
Well, they haven't, which makes me think that the way that this has been done is not the way that I was just describing.
Okay.
If I could,
Go ahead.
so this is the no, that's the panel. The owner is the appointment editor. Um, so in classes, there should be a class called appointment editor. and I should be able to load the class. And I don't get any file system here, which doesn't help me very much.
That
Uh,
is really weird.
because what I want to be able to, what I want to do now is to drag that header file from here. Appointment editor. Can I drag that on? Oops. Yeah, Gorm is really not liking me.
Hmm.
Because now I guess we don't have. No, we don't. Well, what we can do is we can add it manually here and just make sure that we give it the same name that we did there.
Yep. Okay.
Which is duration units, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then drag. Oh, no, never mind. Objects. Drag that onto there. Other way around. It's been a long time since I've done this. Drag it onto there. Duration units. Connect. And duration units is connected to the pop-up button.
Okay, so now we need to populate it.
Yeah, so we want to do that probably here. Attributes. Oh, maybe less there than I thought. Oh, okay. So it's just got a menu. It's just got you just add menu items to that. It's got
Okay.
an NS menu. So what do we want?
Hours.
Days.
Days. Yep. And then
Uh,
I guess weeks, since there's a third option.
yeah, I was going to say the easiest thing to do is to not edit the number of things, and I'm going to give each of those a different tag so we can use their tag value. So one thing we can do in Gorm is we can simulate the UI. So now we've got an editable UI. That is still not editable, that field, despite having
Right.
set it. But that, obviously we can use that.
Are you
So
getting a lot of screen artifacting, or is that a VNC thing?
that is VNC. It looks all right
Okay.
both on there and on the OBS.
Okay.
It could be related to the amount that this is updating.
Right. Okay. Okay. I just got like there's a bit of garbage. There's like half a window right up here,
Oh,
and
okay,
a
right.
half
No,
a
that's
window here.
okay. That is not
Okay,
happening
no, that's just VNC. Okay,
locally.
that's fine. So now we need to figure out why it's not editable.
Yeah, and it definitely that says editable.
Yeah, it does.
What
Does
else
it
is
need to be saved and reloaded, maybe? Or
turn draws? Okay, so draws background makes it the right color,
mm-hmm.
but that is editable and selectable. That is editable and selectable. Well, let's save it and let's run it. Let's run it. It's not letting me run it anymore. Test interface. There we go. Yeah, I'm
And
still
it's still not edited. That is weird.
can't give it. Oh, but I can't give that focus either.
What if
Ah,
you
that's the
press
wrong
tab?
keyboard. I was typing in the wrong keyboard, which is why there's a big speaker stats view over your head. Well, we never set up a next key view to
Right.
that, but I
Okay.
also can't tab to anything else.
Right.
I can't edit that. I can do, you know, I can do all of the things except edit any of the text fields that aren't the first one. So that might be a problem with Gorm. We might want to
Okay.
just
Well,
like,
it's quick to rebuild and run the app anyway.
yeah. Let's quit Gorm. And while I'm here, I just want to look at whether it is actually loading multiple of the things, because it gives that really long set of duplicate symbols libraries. It doesn't, but it is possible that one of these libraries or bundles links against a different version of libgnu GUI than it does. I need to go through and, like, you know, evidently sort of upgrading the installation here has gone poorly at some point. Anyway, what we do? We were going to make that. And then we were going to run it. Yeah, because it's happening there as well, some bundle is likely linked against a different version of GUI than the app is. Anyway, right. Events.
So events, new appointments.
So we still don't get a tab. This has got some weird formatter on it, which is going to make it hard.
Yeah, it has a kind of state formatter. So we can just get rid of that.
Yeah, because it means I can't actually write.
Right.
Can I write 36 hours? Yeah. Well, no, it won't, because it won't let me finish editing that because it's not valid.
Right. Okay. Okay, so we'll take the NS date formatter out, I guess.
Yeah, we probably want a number formatter because we want it to be a number. And thinking about this, we probably do want minutes as well, because you do want to be able to do like 30-minute or 15-minute.
Yes. Yep.
I'm thinking so maybe this might be where we call it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Because we're running fairly long now.
Yep.
So we've got a goal in mind. We've got things we've done. We've learned that SimpleAgenda is actually quite simple. It's quite an easy code base to find what we were looking for. We've got a project in mind, so maybe next time we do that project.
That sounds good.
Nice. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Stephen, for listening to the rants and providing your own rants, and for joining in the codes. Thank you, More401, for thanking us. We appreciate the thanks. I know I always say please like and subscribe, but actually what I mean is, like, we appreciate having you here, and we appreciate like joining in with the conversations and all the support and the coding help that we get. We are currently at 48 followers, I think, and when we get to 50, we're allowed to like have subscribers and special, all that nonsense about Twitch emotes, all that kind of stuff. Should you feel that way inclined, my question is not please can you subscribe, because we're not doing this for money. My question is please can you find 2 friends that you think would benefit from this stream and tell them about this stream, so that we can increase the followers and increase the love for Objective-C in the community.
That sounds great. Please do that.
Right, nice. Okay, well, thanks everyone. We are going to be back. So 18:30 UTC is now our regular start time, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to be back at 7:30 p.m. UK time, 8:30 p.m. European time, 18:30 Zulu. Work it out in your own time zone if you don't live in any of those time zones. Sorry, I'm not being exclusionary. I'm just being tired. Um, and we will see you again next week.
Perfect.
Goodbye.